About 8 years ago, I noticed that I would get seasonally depressed, mostly in the autumn and in the spring. And at the same time, I would get this great lassitude. My mood would turn on a sixpence. And certainly in the spring, I'd put it down to great fatigue after a winter of work. I was an arborist in those days. In the autumn, no explanation. I went to see my doctor a number of times. I suspected that I had some sort of hormone deficiency, so I'd get my hormones screened and they were all fine. And the last thing that occurred to me actually was Lyme disease, although when I trained in tree work, it was something that we were warned about, and it was suggested that we tie tape round our trousers, and if we take a tick off us, to look for the bullseye and the rash around where we'd been bitten. However, subsequent research shows that only 30% of people get that, and some people go without the rash whatsoever, and I think I was one of those people, although I do remember picking ticks off me on a number of occasions. I worked in the New Forest, which is in the south of England, that is known now to be rife with Lyme disease. And then in late winter, early spring of 2014, I really noticed I was getting sicker and sicker. I turned up for work one morning and met all the chaps on site, and I actually had to stay in the truck. I couldn't even open the door, and leant out and almost slurred at them that they would have to do the work without me that day. And I deteriorated pretty swiftly from then on. I went to see a new doctor who suggested I had seasonal adjustment disorder syndrome and offered me some antidepressants. I insisted at that point that I had Lyme. I was offered a blood test, but not for 2 weeks after that particular appointment. And I mentioned this, by the way, rather than complaining about the health system in the UK, is what I'd like to point out is that this is solely from ignorance. You know, Lyme has yet to be really understood by many people who understand Lyme, let alone those who know zero about it. So you know, my doctor is without blame. He was just complete lack of information. And in fact, the lady who does my accounts was the person who pointed it out in the end, because she had had it but had caught it very quickly, and antibiotics had done it for her. My research thereafter was that I was far too late for antibiotics, and by the time I was taken to hospital with a suspected stroke, which I'd researched were actually the symptoms of Lyme, I knew that I really had to get on the case. So that was late April, early May 2014, and I think it'd be fair to say by then I was a pretty sick man, and I could noticeably see myself deteriorating almost on a daily basis. The thing that frightened me most was this business of having a suspected stroke, because I can remember saying goodnight to my wife from the door. I was going to go upstairs to bed, and instead of goodnight coming out of my mouth, something more like came out, and we laughed. And I then lost my balance and nearly fell over and laughed again, and went upstairs, and in the morning I woke up and I had completely lost the power of speech. And funny enough, that's what frightened me more than anything. I mean, I laughed about it by saying, well, it's far worse for my friends, they won't be able to hear me talk again. But actually inside, that was the thing that really put me in a place of fear about it, yes. That and losing balance, actually. And I had a funny experience with it too. That same morning I had Bell's palsy, which for people who don't know, it's when half your face loses the muscular control and falls down. So you have this completely asymmetrical face. And I could feel there was something wrong, and I looked in the mirror, and it made me laugh so much. And of course the laughter then made me feel lightheaded, which made me feel sicker, that made me look at my face again. It was a very strange spiral of behaviour. But in the end, that day, I ended up in hospital, having all the treatment for a suspected stroke. And I can remember lying on the table saying, I haven't got a stroke, I've got Lyme disease. Well, then try and get tested properly. That was the next challenge. The National Health Service in the UK, I think would be fair to say, again, more from ignorance, are not able to reliably test for Lyme. So I went to the only clinic I know of in the UK, called the Breakspear Clinic, which is about 25 miles north of London, where they do the proper hour-and-a-half long interview, because it takes as much talking with a Lyme savvy doctor as it does the blood test to work out that if that's really what you have, because Lyme is understood to mimic something like 350 different potential symptoms of other diseases. So lifestyle and habits and where you live and all of these kinds of things play as much a part as the blood tests, because it's also very easy to have negative positives and positive negatives in some of the Lyme tests. However, the Breakspear got the tests back, and sure enough, it was a positive. I had 3 tests done, which is a broad spectrum number of tests that go through urine, feces and blood, and have a look at all the parasites that are in the body. Because if you have Lyme disease, the likelihood is you have a big parasite infection as well, or should I say a big parasite infestation as well, and things like Creutzfeldt-Jakob and all sorts of other things that come with it. And I know enough about how to eat and all that kind of thing to realise that my massive hunger rages for sugar and carbohydrates were being caused by flourishes and die-offs of various things inside that were very much a part of the whole thing. I made a choice immediately after looking up online that antibiotics were the last thing I was going to do. I knew stories of people who had been given antibiotics for 2 years without anything happening to change their lives except for the worst. I looked in the UK for treatment, and in fact I went back to the clinic that did the diagnosis and had a lot of IV treatment, vitamin C, vitamin B, a whole spectrum of stuff. And I think that kept my energy levels at a point where I was able to function, but where is the very thing that's actually going to kill the spirochete, which is highly intelligent, knows how to hide in the body, puts a biofilm around it when it's under attack. I mean, this is a very, very old parasite. You know, it's had millions of years to get to where it is. And because America has got time over the UK in terms of Lyme disease, I mean, treating it for longer, I looked at a number of places in America to come and get treatment. One of which was Hippocrates, which I'd heard of before. I knew people who had done the Life Transformation course and the Health Educator course. And I rang up, and I forget to whom I spoke. And I just asked the question, can you get rid of Lyme disease? The answer was yes, so I came here. Simple as that. And the raw food is something I've pursued on and off for 5 years now. Sprouting I've done before. I'm completely into organic food. I understand and have done for a while the importance of food. But the raw food regime here is outstanding and very, very much a part of getting better. If you carry on eating cake and pizza and all of those other things that I still love but won't eat anymore, you're still going to have the parasites that bring down the immune system, and whatever treatment you have, I don't think it will be effective. There was a moment when I got back to England and I gave myself an implant of silver as I'd been instructed, and I felt so ill that as I was feeling ill, I knew that this was the last die-off or Herxheimer reaction that I was going to get, and sure enough it was. And that was 6 weeks ago now, 2 months ago now. So I had my blood tested again in the UK at the Breakspear Clinic, and actually the last time I was here the results came through and I'm completely clear. That's it. Actually I feel quite emotional just still saying that, but it's doable. You have to apply yourself and follow the instructions, if not to the letter, but to 95% of the letters. It's pointless, being miserable around it. Treat yourself once a week to something that you really like, but it works. It really works. Well, I always had hope, I have to say. It's in fact, there was a moment when I realized what was happening to me back in the spring of 2014, that my immediate reaction was that this is a blessing, because I knew it was going to change my life for the better. And I have to say, in spite of all the massive depression that it produces, the very dark moods, the ability of one's emotions to turn on a sixpence, behind all of that, I always had this streak of light that said, this is going to change your life for the better. So I have my energy, I've shed 30 pounds, I'm having some hormone treatment because my hormones were on the floor as a result of all of this, so that's made me feel a lot better. I'm on the raw food diet and will be when I go back to England. I feel $1 million. So ultimately it's my responsibility to have got better. I am eternally grateful to everybody here, and I mean everybody. The ladies who look after our rooms, the nurses who do the IVs, the people in the kitchen, you name it. It's such a massive team effort to help people here. And it's done very subtly and very quietly and beautifully, actually. Yeah.